to ChewintheCud, Season 2, Episode 9. My name's Andrew Jones.
And Neil Greggor. We're here to entertain again.
How you doing, Neil?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. You?
Yeah. And it's March, and with us today is a returning guest. I was going to say our first returning guest, but I guess we had Sarah back but she was a guest host as you were elsewhere. So I suppose we will say our first returning guest, Andrew Clune. Hello, Andrew.
Hello.
Yeah, welcome back.
Welcome back. How are you? How you been since we last seen you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Thank you very much for having me back.
No, more than welcome. Thank you for joining us again. Obviously, first time round we were talking about one of your, should we call it hobbies?
Yes.
In terms of your speaking at the local shows, but this time I'm going to talk about a subject a little bit closer to your day today. So Andrew, I guess since we last seen you, you've had a little bit of promotion. You're now Business Development Manager for BASF.
That's right, yes. So I've changed roles slightly. I'm Business Development Manager, so I manage a small portfolio with BASF and I'm looking after their nitrogen solutions that we have.
Good, and that's what we thought. It's March, and I'm hoping everybody listening is aware of this, but come the 1st of April, we will have to use protected or Urease Inhibited Ureas. So we thought it was a good topic for our March podcast to discuss this with Andrew, given that it's one of his products that he looks after. To discuss why, where, how, what the mode of actions is, why do it economically as well as environmentally. But first, I just thought I'd start, if I may. Well, actually, no, Andrew, I suppose really we've spoken about you before, or you've given us your background before. Anything really you want to add to what you've done before, or?
Yeah, so my background is I have a background in agronomy from Australia originally.
Yep.
And I came over here nearly 20 years ago now, which is
that long?
Very scary.
Yep.
Had a few years doing backpacking jobs. I was an agronomist in Australia. I got back into agronomy in the UK. And then worked as an agronomist for 7 years before joining BASF as an agronomy manager. So my role there was to speak with agronomists in the southwest and ensure they knew how to use our products, a little bit of PR and marketing sort of work, and a little bit of trials, and more so farm trials really, looking at how these products really work out in the field.
Yeah.
Change of roles last December, where I then took on the business development manager role, and here we are.
So yeah, we're going to talk about Urease inhibitors. That'd be the best way to describe them.
Yeah, so there's a range of products that are available, and the ones that BASF have are Urease inhibitors.
Yep.
And you're right that there's a change in policy coming through that from the 1st of April, if you're using urea, it needs to be protected or inhibited.
Yeah. Well, I will start with something I managed to find on the gov.uk website yesterday. I was looking it up. Now, this all obviously, I believe, went out for consultancy. Consultancy, is that the right word? Yes, in 2021. And this is on the government website. It says, we welcome the proposed alternative approach that will be delivered through Red Tractor Farm Assurance Scheme and Fax Advisors from 2023. Should say it got delayed by a year, didn't it? It was originally supposed to come in 2023. The alternative approach will mean scheme members can only use untreated or unprotected urea fertilisers from the 15th of January to the 31st of March each year. Use Urease inhibitor treated or protected urea fertilisers throughout the rest of the year. We will monitor the effectiveness of the scheme and will introduce regulations if the scheme does not reduce the necessary amount of ammonia emissions. So ultimately, this is about the Clean Air Act.
That's correct.
And reducing ammonia emissions. And as it says there, if we don't do it voluntarily, as the industry is doing it under Red Tractor, the government will enforce.
Before you start, inhibitor. Can you explain to me, as somebody that doesn't quite understand what that means?
So if we look at the chemical reaction first, perhaps, as a way of explaining it, and we'll go through the process. So as a chemical reaction, urea reacts with water, and that then forms ammonia and carbamaic acid. That carbamaic acid then further reacts with water to produce ammonia gas and carbon dioxide. That ammonia gas will then further react with water to form ammonium. And ammonium, that also, we should say at that stage also, the ammonia from the first step of that reaction also will form ammonia, which is a plant food.
What the plant needs to, and that's what the plant can use to do whatever it needs to do.
Yeah, so plants can only take up nitrogen in two forms. One is ammonium and the other one is nitrate. So particularly here, when we talk about urea and urease, we're talking about ammonium. Eventually, that's why we're using urea to be able to feed the plant through ammonium. So when we make a fertilizer out of urea, when that prill lands on the ground, it's hygroscopic. It will attract moisture and start to move down into the soil, and that's the start of that chemical reaction. Now, the presence of urease enzymes actually speeds up that process. It's a catalyst for that chemical reaction to take place. It's actually that first reaction we talked about will take place without the enzyme, but it's 100 trillion times faster, and that's the actual number that's quoted.
Really?
In scientific I haven't just picked a big one off the shelf there. So, yeah, 100 trillion times faster in the presence of these enzymes.
That's not even a number you think.
Yeah, so it speeds up the process. It doesn't. Whenever you hear enzymes, they're involved in a chemical process, a biological process. They're speeding things up. They catalyze that. So that will cause a local spike in pH as that reaction takes place, and if the urea at that stage is not washed into the soil, then it can volatilize as ammonia. And that's where this is what the basis for this Clean Air Act is, trying to remove the ammonia that's been volatilized out of the soil into the atmosphere at that time. So whenever you hear A's added to a word, so urease, that means it's an enzyme.
Right.
So the inhibitors, what they do...
like in the body of amylase, isn't there, and other things, exactly the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what the inhibitors do is they work in lots of different fashions, depending on what you're looking at, but they will quite often bind up part of that chemical process. So in this case, these inhibitors actually bind to the urease enzyme, or should I say the urease enzyme binds to the inhibitors. It is therefore not available to take place in that chemical reaction. Short-term basis. These reactions take place all the time. Enzymes are moving in and out of different states as they're doing this, but it temporarily slows that down. So that's when you hear inhibitors, that's what they're doing. In particular, urease inhibitors, they're stopping the availability of urease to take part in that chemical reaction that's taking part. You'll also hear about protected urea. In that case, the prills have been these aren't my product range, the protected urea, so I'm not 100% sure what they're doing, but essentially there's polymers that coat the urea, slow the breakdown of the prill, or they'll be binding up something else that's taking part in that process.
So we should say there are various products on the market for doing this, isn't it? You're obviously looking after those ones for BASF, but obviously when we thought, this could be a good subject, I know the man that will know the answer to these questions.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. So there are numerous ones. We can talk about the efficacies and those sort of things.
Yeah. I mean, we should say, and I guess this is probably the relevant maybe to put it in now, because I was going to read you something from their tractor, but we can read that in a minute. When I started selling fertiliser in my previous role, when you talk to people and protected urea started, when you were doing the sums, they always talked about a 10% loss from volatilisation, and that seemed to be quite the industry sort of quote. So whereas 46N is what urea is, really you do your sums on 41.6. So actually the cost difference between an unprotected and a protected was such that it made up that 10%. So while you were paying that at the time, it was 30 quid a tonne more, you were getting more bang from your buck, or you were getting back what you were paying, if that makes sense. However, I've certainly done some reading since. I meant to pull something off of an Australian site that I was looking at last night, completely forgot. But if stuff I've read, volatilisation can be, depending on environmental conditions, and that's ultimately what it comes down to, isn't it? Can be anywhere between 5 and 50%. So you could potentially be losing 50% of what you're spreading out on the field.
Yes, it could be. I've got a few more of those sort of numbers for you, which might actually put into perspective why the government's acting upon this really. So the Clean Air strategy came in 2019, and that was charged with the requirement to reduce emissions from urea-based fertilisers. That was mentioned in there. And the UK government is legally obliged to, by 2020, they needed to reduce ammonia emissions by 8% to the levels that they were in 2005. and they need to further reduce that by 16% by 2030. That's what's really driven this. And some of the figures, like what you were just talking about, Andrew, actually they're a little bit eye-watering when you hear some of them, and we do need to do something as an industry. So as part of that work to find the benchmark in 2005, DEFRA funded research by ADAS between 2002 and 2005. They found that the average ammonia loss from applied to land from solid urea was 22%, and that range was anywhere from 2 to 43%. So some of those real upper end 50% sort of that was there.
Is it as you say solid? Is it different for liquid urea?
Yes. So the average was 14% from liquid.
Right. So not as much.
Not as much, and the range was 5 to 19% with that, and that fits almost bang in with where the European Environment Agency has losses through urea, which was 12 to 17%. So the ADAS figures were there. And 20% applied nitrogen for urea is lost to ammonia, is sort of the industry standard like we were talking about. But that can be, if the climate and if the soil temperature, soil moisture is sort of correct, that can be up to 80%. But that 20% is roughly where we're talking most of the time.
So, okay, what causes volatilization then? If you answering that, really the basic question is what causes it?
So, as a pure chemical reaction, you've got your three states of a liquid, or your three states. You've got solid, you've got liquid, and you've got gas. Volatilization is a change from a liquid to a gas.
But what environmental conditions then make this greater?
So, if you have hot conditions.
Yeah.
So if you think about where the framework's coming from at the moment, its applications in April.
Yeah.
Soils are warming up.
Yeah.
The ambient temperature is warming up. That chemical process that we talked about earlier does release ammonium gas, which once it's into the soil is it can still be released from there, but it's a lot more stable when it's in there and it's reacting with
because I know I've had that conversation in the past here, like the spring grazers in this country particularly like to use urea all season, and I know one or two said, well, my agronomist has said we should use some ammonium nitrate during the summer, and I've sort of gone, well, when I was in Oz, all we used was urea. Okay, when it's real hot we weren't using it, but still temperatures were hotter than they were here. And interestingly, I did contact a couple of my guys, including James Garrity, who we spoke to in December, and said, what's the go? And a friend of mine down in Victoria said, well, we can just spread urea. And he said, well, we can spread urea. They're starting to, did he say the sugarcane boys, they're hitting a little bit? Right. And his comment was, providing it's used in the right conditions, urea is still acceptable. But I'm thinking to myself, well, knowing having lived there, you're going to be warmer temperatures, more moist more of the time, I don't know. But I did look, there are certainly some protected ureas available in Australia now, but neither of them, when I said any legislation coming, were aware of it. Now, don't quote that anybody please listening, because I don't know that's fact or not. But this is obviously feedback from farmers. Well, they are not aware of anything. And to be honest with you, when I started talking to my clients about this, probably about this time last year, after I'd been invited to a fertiliser conference and said, you will not be able to use you will have to use protected urea come 1st of April next year. They're all like, what? Nobody seemed to know about this. And hence why we're doing this, to hopefully, if anyone's missed it, someone else will pick up on it and roll with it.
Yeah, there's more coming out about it now, because it's come close. I think there might have been, it was sort of pushed down the road a little bit.
So it certainly got delayed a year, definitely.
It did, and through that delay, and also the consultation was delayed. I think it's important to understand where the consultation came from, and why I think we got delayed to where we are now is that there was 3 options put on the table in the consultation. The first one, and the preferred solution, was to ban urea sales after 2025.
Full stop.
Full stop.
But where were we even going to get enough AN from, given that, as we all know in the industry, CF have closed one of the factories and etc. etc.
So the government, through this consultation process, rolled back on that when they realised that wasn't really a plausible solution. The second option, must be said, was that all urea had to be protected or inhibited. And the third option was this closed period. And through the consultation and through a lot of backwards and forwards, and I think this is part of the reason why everything's been pushed back, was the coming up with the definition and looking at what they're now calling option 4, which is the still a closed period for urea.
Yep.
But if you want to use it outside of that closed period, so you can still use urea from the unprotected urea from the 15th of January to the 31st of March. To use it after that in the closed period, it needs to be inhibited or protected urea. So that was the compromise sort of solution that was put on the table, that was accepted by the government, and working with the NFU and Red Tractor to work out how they're going to try and implement it and monitor it to see an effective change of ammonia emissions.
I think now's probably a good time then to quote this one. This one's a little bit longer, so please bear with me.
Put on the posh voice here, Andrew.
No, I don't have one of them. The government consultation on reducing ammonia emissions from solid urea fertilisers closed in January 2021. In March 2023, Farming Minister Mark Spencer warned that should the industry fail to self-regulate the use of urea this year, DEFRA planned to impose regulations. Consequently, to support this self-regulating approach, the industry asked Red Tractor to introduce a standard in 2024 which will help to demonstrate the responsible use of uninhibited urea fertiliser. NFU Deputy President Tom Bradshaw said, "We have informed DEFRA that the industry self-regulation approach to the use of uninhibited urea fertiliser under a new Red Tractor standard to be enforced from the 1st of April 2024. The NFU and industry partners fought hard for 2 years to achieve a robust and pragmatic industry-led approach. Without this, the clear proposal from DEFRA was an outright ban on the use of uninhibited urea fertiliser," which you mentioned, and I'd heard that elsewhere as well. He added, with the government's clean air strategy targeting, among other things, reduction in ammonia emissions, farming must demonstrate we can play our part in reducing emissions while maintaining competitiveness. Demonstrating responsible use of urea fertiliser will show government that we can act responsibly and hopefully open the door to other industry-led solutions. So, I'll just keep going if that's all right. The Red Tractor standards are: from the 1st of April 2024, fertiliser containing urea must only be applied when the following requirements are met. Protected/inhibited fertilisers containing solid urea must be applied within any product used by best before dates. Protected/inhibited fertilisers containing liquid urea can be applied with a prescribed rate of protected/inhibitor for the application and within any product used by best before dates. In England, unprotected, uninhibited solid fertiliser containing urea must only be applied between the 15th of January and the 31st of March. In England, unprotected, uninhibited liquid fertiliser containing urea can be applied between the 15th of January and the 31st of March. In England, unprotected/uninhibited liquid fertilisers containing urea can be applied between the 1st of April and last application in autumn only if agronomic justification is provided by FACTS qualified farm personnel or advice specific for the crop has been provided by a FACTS qualified advisor and then followed. In Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales, fertiliser containing urea solid and liquid can be applied as per relevant legislation. Businesses not complying with the standard after 1st of April 2024 will be required to undertake a new basis module reducing ammonia emissions. This module, which has been funded and developed in collaboration with AIC, AICC, CLA, NIAB, Red Tractor and NFU, is designed to give farmers the knowledge and tools to reduce ammonia emissions from both manufactured fertilisers and organic materials in livestock housing, storage and when applied to land. The online module includes a mixture of videos, audio, interactive learning, being approximately 45 minutes to complete. So that is a quote directly off the Red Tractor website.
Yes, so I think it's all in our best interest to really try and use protected or inhibited ureas if we can. The incentive is to keep the fertilisers that we currently have.
Yeah. If we want to keep it, we've got to comply.
Yeah, I don't know what the position of the government will be, but certainly understood what their intent was with the first consultation. But also, there's some really good reasons to use it. If we can just set aside the environmental reasons for a moment, and I'm not belittling those one bit.
No.
From an agronomic point of view, every time something is volatilised or leached or moves out of the soil, that's lost nutrients.
Yep.
Okay, it has a knock-on effect on the environment. But in a lot of cases, you've paid for those nutrients to be put on the soil in the first place. So if we can keep them where they're needed, where they're required, and where you've ultimately paid for them to be, then everybody's in a better place. Your fertiliser costs potentially can come down. Nitrogen use efficiency increases. That's what we're talking about really from a plant point of view, is nitrogen use efficiency or nitrogen recovery. How much is that plant using of the nitrogen you put on the soil? So it's, from a selfish point of view, you paid for it, you want it to be in the place that it should be. You don't want it leaving your field, either going up in the air or going out in the water, or we want to be able to keep it where it should be. From an agronomic point of view, that's what we need to be doing. So I think
also economically, as you say, you paid for it, you want it.
Yeah.
You don't want suddenly 10% to go running off. I want my nitrogen. Give it to me.
Yeah. So I think we can keep it there for longer, and that's what we're seeing with look, we've done a huge amount of trials with these products over the years, from lab studies to replicated trials. So they're the small plots that you might see, statistically relevant, and also from strip trials. And ADAS have a neat piece of software, a program called the agronomics trials, which actually take yield monitoring and GPS data and can actually even out the noise that comes from those, so you can get statistically robust samples now from a yield monitor, whereas before it was never statistically relevant because the technology wasn't there. Well, the technology is there now, and ADAS have found a way to actually, like I say, reduce the noise that might be from the field, and using this is a very crude way of explaining it, and I'll probably get in trouble for explaining it like this, but so each pixel that creates a yield monitor map, most of them, depending on what GPS you're running, are sort of 5 by 5 meter pixels, that sort of becomes like a mini trials plot, and you compare it to the ones that are around it, and then you understand what the background noise is. And they can get statistically relevant results from that. And we've done a huge amount of work with them on the fungicide work and all that sort of thing we've done. But we've also started to do that with our nitrogen solutions, which now provide statistically robust field trials and not just small plots, because the reality is that in small plot work, it's generally done on a day when it's perfect, there's no wind or that sort of thing. Well, actually, it's not how farming works. So that's why we quite often see products work differently in fields when they're applied in a farm situation. So this now, and everything's pointing the same way. We're getting return on your investment when you're using these protected ureas and inhibited ureas, and in some cases we're seeing a yield uplift. We're certainly seeing nitrogen use efficiency increase as well. So it actually has a benefit to the crop above and beyond the Clean Air Act. So we should be using it.
And to be honest with you, maybe it's worth pointing out, if you do the economics of it, spreading a protected urea per unit of N is cheaper than spreading AN per unit of N.
Yeah, so the product we've got is called Lemus, and we've done a lot of trials over a few years, and what we're seeing from there, and I have to be careful to quote figures because, like everything, the fertiliser price that went in there,
there's a lot different,
and the grain price now has changed with that. But really, what we're seeing, I suppose, is depending on whether you're using UAN or granular urea, is we're seeing
UAN,
liquid.
Right, yeah.
Urea,
just for anyone listening that wasn't there.
It's a combination of urea and ammonium nitrate in liquid solution, and it's the specification that you want varies depending on how much nitrogen you want. We're seeing a 5% uplift in yield from the granular and a 4% from the UAN
compared to
an untreated product,
right,
an uninhibited fertilizer.
So a standard urea.
And in a huge amount of trials that we've done, we're seeing that we're getting the same yields when we use protected urea versus ammonium nitrate. We're seeing the same yields.
Get the same yields. And say, if you look at it economically, from a unit of N, it's cheaper buying it as a protected urea than it is buying it as an AN.
And the key, when I said we have to be careful about using when we run models to show margin over input cost, but that's ever changing depending on the fertiliser price or the grain price. But the key, I suppose, from the levels of yield improvement we're seeing, and also having the same result from ammonium nitrate versus protected urea, is that the higher the fertiliser price, it leads to an increase in savings if you switch to a protected or inhibited urea. Certainly in our case, where we've got a huge amount of trials with Limus, we're showing that. And the greater the grain price, then the greater the value for using a inhibited urea as well.
And it can have some other knock-on benefits, because I know I've had one client say it's taken the stress out of it. Because rather than worrying about when it's going to rain, because she has a contractor come in and do all the fertilising, she can spread it. She knows it will sit there until the right time and go, so it's taken complete stress out of it. And another one, she said to me, it's the fact that it's 46N rather than 34.5. I can go further with a spreader load than what I would otherwise.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So of course it's lowering her carbon footprint, because she's going in and out with the tractor less, she's using less diesel, so it's actually having a knock-on effect for her carbon footprint as well, so it's having that benefit too.
That's also the nitrogen use efficiency thing as well. If you can show that you can apply less product per hectare for the same result, and again, all that's coming into that and helping reduce carbon footprints.
Well, it's all better. Again, we're farming more efficiently, therefore more sustainably, and everything that comes with it.
Everything follows.
So yeah, I think it's definitely something that it's something we have to do now.
We have to.
It is a big agriculture is a big emitter of ammonia. We know that, and we have to. The National Atmospheric Emissions Survey that was conducted in 2018 showed that 88% of all of the UK ammonia emissions comes from agriculture.
Is that right?
And about a quarter of that's from animal housing,
a
quarter's from manure application, so putting that down into the soil, and about a quarter of that is from fertiliser application. So,
just as a matter of interest, what other industries would be putting ammonia into the atmosphere?
That's a good question, Neil, and I'm not sure about that.
I've heard that figure before, but I don't think I know what the other industries were. But if we're doing 88% of it, there's no point hiding from it. We've got to stick our hands up and go, the majority of it is us, therefore. This is one thing I accept, that as an industry, we are the ones that need to be doing something about it. Let's be honest, it's like some of the things I know others do feel that we're the easy target. Therefore, they're spending 80% of their time to get 20%, rather than the other way around. It should be 20% of your time to get the 80%. This is probably the 20 getting the 80, isn't it, really? Because we as an industry the figures say it completely, we are the main culprits for ammonia emissions. We need to deal with it.
Yeah, we do. And you've been working closely with livestock producers as well to work with. I know there's engineering solutions and things for housing that people are looking at to try and reduce emissions from the housing. And I think it
comes in a little bit with going back to our nitrogen cracker again. That would be doing something with some of that as well. So it's all coming into it.
And manure, I know we've been a long way down the NVZ type route, which has improved a lot of the application of manures, so that we don't have the losses to the atmosphere that we used to have. This was done in 2018, and you don't see as many splash plates around as you used to see.
Well, no, it's trading shoe, isn't it now? And whatever, there's been some good grants for that, and a lot of people have purchased that kind of kit to direct inject or whatever it happens to be into the ground, which again is reducing the potential loss from using equipment like that. And as you say, that figure demonstrates completely why we need to do it.
Yeah, it's our responsibility, and put the selfish hat on, keep your nutrients where you want them.
Well, exactly. Make better use of what you've got.
Win-win. Yeah.
So how do, I think you touched on it a little bit before, I know there are a few different products out there. Are you able to, without I suppose giving any trade secrets away, talk about some of the modes of action or how they do, or?
Yeah, so there's 3 recognised urease inhibitors in the UK at the moment. There is, now do you want me to do the big long fancy scientific name or just their abbreviation?
No, just the NPPT or whatever it's called will be fine. Or you can try the long names if you want.
Let's go have a go at it. So there's NBPT, which is N-butyl thiophosphoric triamide. That's available in products like Sustain, which is in an agrotame. There is 2-NPT, that's the easy bit, which is 1,2,4-triazole. That's in Piagran Pro. Then there is another one which is the NPPT, which is N-propyl thiophosphoric triamide, which is only available in Limus. So we have.
Try saying all of them after you've had a few, and I'm
Yeah.
struggling now.
I promise I haven't had anything to drink this morning.
Maybe
Yes.
easier.
So BASF has NBPT and NPPT together in Limus. So
Yep.
it's the only one that actually has the NPPT.
The dual
included
and the dual coating.
and that means it's sort of 40% more, has 40% more efficacy. The reason for that is that each of these active ingredients works on a specific set of enzymes, and there's lots and lots of them. So by having 2 in there, you're
Covering more.
That's really what drives that. And then, although it's not really in relation to the ammonia situation, but you'll know that there's nitrification inhibitors as well, sort of the slurry bomb type things. So there's DCD, which is in Diadin, nitropyrin, which is in Enloc, and DMPP, which is in Visura, which is the BASF product.
Right.
So they're ones that will treat either digestate or slurries.
As you mentioned now, I'm gonna raise this one, and I spoke to you about this before, and this is how this sort of conversation came about to do this, wasn't it? We should emphasise, because I was approached by a client who had been told by his agronomist that there were products in these inhibitors that were related back to organophosphates, etc., etc. They are not in here at all, are
No, they're not. So there's probably a bit of confusion that comes from that. I do wonder partly whether the saying NBPT and NPPT very quickly sounds a lot like DDT, which is an organophosphate insecticide. So NBPT is an organophosphorus compound, so it is not an organophosphate pesticide. Any chemical containing organic carbon and phosphorus may be called an organophosphorus compound.
Yep.
There are many of these that they range in all sorts of things. They're in your DNA. They are in detergents. They're in all sorts of things. They're in pesticides, and a small number of these organophosphorus compounds are also organophosphate pesticides
because they've got an oxygen in them as well.
Yes. So, but NBPT is not that at all. It doesn't. No.
So as the science is today,
Yes.
there is no known side effects to any of these chemicals, and we really want to put that to bed now that there is not the issue with it as why this is only fairly recently came up. And I mean, these have been on the market for what, 5 years now?
Yeah. So they're all registered. They're registered through the EU and UK fertiliser regulations. They do come under the REACH assessment, so they have been looked at for effects on soil microfauna, macrofauna, so earthworms,
Yep.
environmental fates, and that sort of thing. So they have been thoroughly examined.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it was just because it was the end of last year, wasn't it? I approached you and said, "Did you know that?" And then obviously from that it rolled on. Oh, actually, this would be a good podcast because this is coming. But it was I don't know where it suddenly came from, but a client just suddenly said it, and it's like, no, that's not right. And it was like, well, I better, I know a man that might know. So
Yeah, I mean, it must be said though that with all registered products, that they all come with a list of operator safety instructions that do need to be adhered to, and that comes through under the REACH regulations. To we have to test things to make sure, and if there's issues, that's where they're all on the label. They'll explain what the level of PPE you should be using and that sort of thing. So read the label properly and suit up appropriately compared to given what the instructions are. But in terms of having organophosphate phosphate pesticides. No, it's
No,
not.
no, I know. I just wanted to, it was a good opportunity to say that. And, okay, let's be honest, who knows what science may bring down the line, but as it stands today.
Yeah. And I should say there are other routes other than these inhibitors, that there is in the marketplace things that have polymers that surround them that slow the release of the urea, and they fall under these, so they won't be an inhibited urea, but they'll be a protected urea.
Yeah.
So there's one Nutrisphere which is in the marketplace, which is a polymer coated. It's not a urease inhibitor as such, but it's doing a job.
Doing a job. The polymer's got to be broken down first. I'm guessing by moisture before then.
I don't know exactly how all that process works.
No, just guessing by moisture, but yeah.
So they're the ones that are in the marketplace at the moment. I obviously can talk about what ours do. And
do the liquids use the same enzymes in them?
Well, in terms of inhibitors, so yes. So the limus form that's going into the liquid fertilizer is a combination of MBPT and NPPT. It's
right. Someone will be proud of you at BASF for saying it right, Andrew.
I've got to get it right. It's a bit of a tongue twister, isn't it?
It really is.
It is a wee bit. But yeah. No, so we've sort of said a little bit how they work. We mentioned. I won't repeat what their names are, and is there anything technically you think that, without going too technical, that you think we should know about these products? We've spoken about there is benefits environmentally, there are benefits economically, the benefits efficiency. Where else? I'm trying to sell it. We don't have a choice. We have to use these things, but there are benefits to using these things.
I suppose if someone hasn't used it to date, they're in a situation where they have to use it in anger, so to speak. They're using it, but I would use them and see how they get on with them. To be fair, and I given that the yield improvements are roughly 5%, shall we say, and that's we've got information on it that. I would use them like for like at the moment. Now, there are some organisations who've done a huge amount of work that I know are starting to tweak back their fertiliser rates on the back of it. So Velcourt in particular are one that have done a lot of work with ChewintheCud. Our treated limus product is available through Bartholomew's ChewintheCud or Thomas Bell. Right. And Velcourt have done a lot of work with ChewintheCud, and they've seen a 12% uplift in their nitrogen use efficiency when they've done their trials. They're now taking that forward to start to sort of adjust
back a bit.
Nitrogen rates. You're welcome to go and do that, but I would say that you probably want to be using it like for like at the moment.
If you're putting on 50 kilos, put on 50 kilos.
Until you understand the product that you're using. If you haven't used it before, it's a different product. It's a slightly different product. Just until you know how it's working, what it's doing on your land, and then after you've used it and are comfortable with it, you might start to adjust things. But year one, I would say swap it out like for like.
Right, just thought of a statistic in my head. Obviously, in my previous role, I used to sell fertiliser, and we used to buy. It was a buying group, so used to do a urea tender every year. So we're talking 500-600 tons of urea. And this was just interesting. The first year, these sort of products. I mean, there'd been one available on the market for a long time, but then all of a sudden, everybody brought them out. The first year it was something like maybe 20%. 20% of the total tonnage was protected urea, and often that was a case of it's more expensive, whatever. But a few said we'll try it. Interestingly, a year later, it was the other way around.
Really,
it was 20% unprotected, 80% protected, because those that had tried it had seen the benefits, like I'm talking about, in terms of they don't have to worry about when they spread it in the same way. They're travelling less with it. All of these things. It's a very small snapshot. I appreciate, but it was we probably did let's say 500-600 tons would be about right for what was brought through the group in one hit, and it was for that one first year was say possibly 20% protected. Following year, price probably came into it a little bit maybe, but it doesn't matter. But then the second year, it was 80% was then protected.
And driving that was that they used the product.
They used the product. They tried the product. They realised they could see the benefits of using the product, and that's just a small snapshot of farmers around Somerset, Dorset, that were within the group.
Yeah, I can see there'll be people who'll be tempted to put a higher loading of fertiliser on before the 1st of April. Agronomically, it's not the right thing to do. You need fertiliser.
Must be little and often.
And you see that whenever you apply your fertiliser, you do fertiliser trials. Little and often is the way to do it. There's obviously an economic maximum of when you're travelling. You can't go every week and that sort of thing. But it's not the right approach agronomically just to go and dump it all on in one go at the start of the crop and cross your fingers.
I mean, for most people, okay, and ground conditions are going to come into it, and weather conditions. But if you've got from, what did we say, January through till March, potentially get 2 rounds on anyway.
Potentially can, but if we're looking at there's areas of the Blackmore Vale not far from here that through December and January had a huge amount of rain. And the old ground, they might not be able to get on.
No, I know. I did say ground and environmental and weather conditions come into it.
Yeah.
Because I can think of one in particular that the client that got severely flooded, and they know they will every year, but I think they got more so even this year. But yes, if things are right, potentially you could get 2 rounds on anyway, using your unprotected before you even have to think about protected.
I suspect that's what we'll see the marketplace do, is people will buy something that can go on maybe their first application and then buy protected. I think is what we'll probably see happening in the marketplace.
No, definitely, and I'd say there's lots of benefits to doing it. That's for sure. Anything else you think we've missed that we should be covering on this, Andrew?
I think we're just about there. I've had a little look through my notes. I think we've covered everything that.
I should say Andrew's come very well prepared with numerous printouts and pages in his book.
Well, last time I was here, I was talking about myself, wasn't I? And it doesn't matter if I wasn't quite as accurate as I could have been. I was the only one that wasn't aware of it.
Don't worry, disclaimer always goes on the end, so don't treat this as advice sort of thing. But But I mean, really, I suppose, where do you see this is potentially the first step? I mean, obviously, if we as an industry don't do it, the government will enforce some form of regulation. Where do you see the future for fertiliser?
I don't want to second guess what the government's doing, but when you read through the consultation and you read through the proposals that were put forward, they indicated their preferred option
Of no urea.
Actually, I need to be clear that wasn't the government's preferred option. That was the preferred option that came out of the consultation from various NGOs. It's probably more for more non-government organisations.
Right. Sorry, NGOs.
Perhaps I should say more accurate is that when you look through that the preferred option that came out of the consultation was an outright ban.
So there's definitely pressure from outside the industry to be banning. But okay, then make that comparison. Then, what is the difference between using ammonium nitrate and using urea? Looking at the ammonia, what's the word I'm looking for? Giving off the ammonia.
Volatilization.
Yeah. Well, what is the difference between using, I guess, unprotected urea, ammonium nitrate, and then a little bit more maybe against protected urea and ammonium nitrate? Why do those people prefer using ammonium nitrate or want the industry to use that rather than urea? What's the difference?
So ammonium nitrate is a combination of both ammonia and ammonium and nitrate.
Yep.
So you have the nitrate element that is not going to volatilize into ammonia. So there's less there to start with.
Yep.
It's tended to be used in the UK is one of the few countries where ammonium nitrate's the preferred ammonium source.
Do you know it is? It's what James actually, when he messaged me, he goes, "I hear you fellas still use ammonium nitrate. I haven't had that for years," and as if almost jealous that he couldn't get it. But I mean, yeah, we seem to be, from the conversations I've had with people, it seems to be a quirk almost of this country that we still use ammonium nitrate, whereas most places don't.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, so one part of that fertilizer is immediately available. The nitrate element of that is immediately available to the plant.
Yep.
I suspect over the years, there's availability wise, and there's been an issue. Not been an issue. It's been more available, so people have used more of it. And it's been only recently where the cost benefit of urea has sort of come in line. Because of the volatilization element of it, it's probably hasn't got the greatest efficiency compared to ammonium nitrate.
Yep.
So it would be another reason why people wanted to use the ammonium nitrate. But there's been a lot of work done recently by lots of organisations to show that there's quite often not the difference isn't as huge as what people thought.
The disparity that people think there is. Yeah.
So,
and then what about, I guess, I think we touched on it a little bit before, but I guess a protected urea against ammonium nitrate, are there advantages? Obviously I've spoken about the economic advantages, but are there other advantages really?
So our trials are showing that there's no yield disadvantage at all from using ammonium nitrate versus protected urea. We've not seen any yield loss at all. It's performing the same. In some cases we've shown that there's a slight advantage. And we're seeing actually that in some cases there's a greater nitrogen use efficiency from using these protected ureas. So, inhibited urea, sorry.
It's getting people to change, because I'm just thinking of somebody I know, and it's like, well, you ought to look at it. Oh no, we've always just got the fertilizer spinner sat on ammonium nitrate, and that's what they do, and that's what they've always used, and that's what they always will use. But people need to be more open, I think.
Yeah, it's a bit tongue-in-cheek that there's a lot of people that are still, 100 weight and a half, 20, 10, 10, thank you, that's it, done.
Yeah.
Regardless of what their soil indices are, I say there's a lot of people, that's not right. That used to be a habit, and I think
I think there's still a few. There is that little.
The economics are changing now.
Yeah.
That can't be an affordable approach, and that a targeted approach using facts qualified advisors, looking at everything that you've got available to you to put nutrients into the soil, all the manures. We're in the West Country very blessed that there's a lot of natural organic material around that helps, so that the reliance upon bagged fertilizer isn't as high as in an all arable situation over in the east.
Yeah.
So we need to be looking at all of those and really examining them and seeing how we can push them. They're valuable resources, so we need to look at it and
make better use of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's what let's be hoping. Was it 2-3 years ago when fertilizer started to spike? I mean, that was something I hoped at the time, that maybe one of the longer term benefits of this is people will look at using their organic fertilizers better or more efficiently than what they have been, because that stuff has a value. Make use of it.
Absolutely. I'm sure before my time that farmyard manures were going onto agricultural land to get rid of it. No other reason than that. So I don't think the value of it was really appreciated.
No.
Not truly appreciated.
Not truly appreciated, yeah, that's perhaps a better way to phrase it. And certainly with costs coming under scrutiny at the moment, and with fertiliser prices rising, actually people need to look at that in depth, work out how much they can get from their manures.
They're organic, already on farm.
Top up where they can't.
So no, that's God, what was I going to say now? Completely gone out of my head. But yes, exactly. Really, if you're doing this, you want to be talking to a facts qualified advisor.
Yes.
And there are many around. And get the recommendations. Try and not just this, but any of your fertilizer. Really, it's going to come in that you need this, and that's what you need to be doing. So I think really looking at it, it's probably time to start wrapping it up, and I think we've covered everything we wanted to cover on it. So unless you're going to tell me otherwise, Andrew, any last words of wisdom, or do you think there's anything else, something we need to cover we haven't covered?
No, I think we've covered it all off. So hopefully everyone has a nice, easy spring going forwards from here.
Well, yes, definitely want to. Can't be any worse than last year, can it? Let's be honest with you.
Thanks for the information. That's great.
Yeah, no. So on that, yes. Thank you, Andrew, again for your for coming to join us and probably making you sweat a bit. You look a bit more nervous, I think, this time than last time.
Like I said, last time I was talking about myself. It's a topic I know quite a lot about. As I always like to say, if you have any questions for Andrew or any of our guests, please do email us. The email is podcast@ChewintheCud.com. If you'd like to follow us on social media, we are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So please feel welcome to contact us through there if you'd like to. Otherwise, I think it's a goodbye from me. So goodbye and thank you very much, Andrew. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Andrew. Goodbye from me.
Thank you very much, Neil. Thank you very much, Andrew.
And now for the really boring bit, I'm afraid, the legal disclaimer. The information provided during this podcast has been prepared for general information purposes only and does not constitute advice. The information must not be relied upon for any purpose and no representation or warranty is given to its accuracy, completeness or otherwise. Any reference to other organisations, businesses or products during the podcast are not endorsements or recommendations of ChewintheCud Limited. The views of Andrew Jones are personal and may not be the views of ChewintheCud Limited, and the views of Neil Greggor are personal and may not be the views of Viking Genetics and any affiliated companies. For more information on the podcast, articles and details of services offered by ChewintheCud Limited, visit www.chewinthecud.com. Thank you and goodbye.